Hey everybody, welcome back to the Time Pass podcast. This is your host, Ashika. Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. If you haven't done so already, please like me on Facebook at Time Pass Podcast. Follow me on Instagram at timepass_podcast and check out the YouTube channel where you can watch all the episodes of the Time Pass podcast. If you are an auditory listener, wherever you are tuning in to the Time Pass podcast, please make sure that you are liked, followed, or subscribed on your listening platform of choice. All right, you guys, I have done an episode on this before, and it was 2 years ago now, and it was called The New Arranged Marriage, where I featured my brother after he had just had what I refer to in that episode as the new arranged marriage, and he got married. What I'm going to refer to it as for this episode is going to be the modern arranged marriage. Now, what is an arranged marriage? Okay, let's start there. So there's something called so I guess back in the day, the term arranged marriage and forced marriage were kind of synonymous, right? Because the way we think about arranged marriage when we think of it now, for South Asians at least, it has this connotation of like, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. So there is a difference in the modern day arranged marriage. It is definitely different than a forced marriage. In the modern day arranged marriage, basically what it is your family members shops out a spouse for you, husband, wife, whatever it is. Sometimes they will enlist the help of extended family members, and sometimes they'll enlist the help of professionals like matchmakers, like Seema Auntie from Netflix. And sometimes the super modern parents will use matrimony websites like Shaadi.com, and there's like so many. There's like a Punjabi one. There's so many different matrimony websites. So that is kind of how the modern arranged marriage starts off. It's your parents go scouting for you, so to say. They start scouting for a partner for you. They find said partner through their network, whatever it is, matchmaker, extended family, friends, Shaadi.com, whatever it is. And then they start talking not to said partner, but to said partner's family. So who would become your in-laws. And they start to kind of vet things out, right? To make sure that whoever this potential partner is checks off all the criteria that they think that you want or that you're worthy of. So we're talking about things like education, we're talking about things like job, we're talking about things like money, we're talking about things like religion, hobbies, like we're talking about all of that stuff. And whether or not they drink, whether or not they, all of that. Like these families will get down to brass tacks, and their child and the unsuspecting potential partner has no idea what's really going on. Once this happens, and let's say both families have checked all the boxes for each other and they think, okay, this can be a potential match, then they involve the children. So then they will set up a meeting where the potential partner and the other potential partner will meet, sometimes with family, sometimes without. It depends on the family. And in the modern arranged marriage, what happens at this point is once the two partners meet, they decide, did we vibe or did we not vibe? Basically, the people who are getting married have the power of veto. That is the modern day arranged marriage. And basically all that happens is if they do like each other, sometimes it can be really quick and they get engaged within like a month, a week, and then they get married later that year, or it really depends on the timeline of the families and the people getting married. But sometimes it can go on for like a year where you're just kind of like dating or getting to know each other, and maybe you get engaged during that time and maybe you don't, and then you get married. So that is how I would describe the modern day arranged marriage. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of arranged marriages in general. There's so many great articles out there. Everything that I'm going to share with you is linked. The different articles are linked on my website, timepasspodcast.com. So make sure to check them out, and you can read more in the articles because I'm just giving you snippets of information that I pulled from them. But it's estimated that over half of the marriages worldwide are arranged, and over 20 million of those unions are still thriving and existing today. And it's funny because we don't really hear about arranged marriages here in the States. It's not something that we all talk about. If you're South Asian, yes, you hear about it all the time. But if you're not, we don't really talk about arranged marriages. It's not like a norm, a topic that you have by the water cooler or out during happy hour or at a networking event with your friends. The only time people really talk about it is when they talk about the divorce rate for arranged marriages, which is 4%. In India, they estimate that 90% of marriages are arranged and the divorce rate is only 1%. Now, I will say something about this. Can you assume that the low divorce rate in India is a sign that arranged marriages work? I would say no, you cannot assume that, because you're talking about a country that still carries a huge stigma around divorce and divorcees. You're talking about a country where forced marriage also still happens, where child marriage also still happens. You're talking about a country when a woman, to this day, when a woman decides that she no longer wants to stay in that marriage, the family will light her on fire. You're talking about a country where when a woman tries to break a marriage, there are instances where that will turn into violence worse than the fire was violent, but domestic violence where she'll get beat. And then a lot of times those women, when they step forward, they don't have the support of their home too. So is that all of these arranged marriage, of these 90% of marriages in India, is that how they are? Absolutely not. But to assume that arranged marriages are successful because of the low divorce rate in India, I call bullshit. I call bullshit. So anyway, arranged marriages, the tradition isn't just in India. It's predominant in Africa, in the Middle East, Southeast Asia. And when I was doing my research, you guys, I didn't know this, but in the U.S., it's practiced by Hasidic Jews and members of the Unitarian Church. I didn't know that. You learn something new every day. The more you know. That was my star rainbow if you're watching on YouTube. Anyway, I had a moment. So I didn't know that. So it's not, arranged marriages do happen all around the world. It's not just in India. And I sometimes wonder if does it really help build a strong marriage? Like, does it take a village to build a strong marriage when you have an arranged marriage? Now I'm going to talk about the benefits here. So I will tell you that it is nice to have a close relationship with both sides of the family, the in-laws and the others. I would have to say, speaking from my own experience, when I realized that I was not happy in my marriage and started talking about divorce, and actually before I even started talking about divorce, when I started thinking about divorce in my brain, something that was a factor for me, because I'm a very family-oriented person, was the fact that I never really bonded with my ex's family. They like to keep to themselves. They weren't around a lot. They didn't live here. And when they were around, it just never felt like that familial connection. It was very much like I had guests visiting. It wasn't like I had family visiting, if that makes any sense at all. And for me, that was a factor, because I have had relationships. I remember my first boyfriend, you guys, back when I was, younger. I remember being so sad oh God, that was such a, God, it was young love, y'all, young love. But we used to break up and get back together all the time. I remember this man used to break up with me, and then I would leave his house, and before I would get to my house, he would call me back and be like, I didn't mean it. Oh, the drama at that time, right? Now you look back at it, you're just like cracking up. But I loved that man's family. I loved his family. I would go over there and I would just be like hanging out, and I would have family dinners with them. Y'all, I don't play tennis, but he does. Actually, he plays, I think he plays like professionally now. Like he like really took his tennis dreams to the max. But his dad was a really good tennis player and a coach actually, for some pretty well-known tennis people. And I remember, so obviously his mom played too. And I remember one time they're like, let's go play doubles. And I was like, okay. And so we went to go play doubles tennis. And of course I sucked royally. Like, I'm not a tennis player. I can play pickleball. Like, I really can't play tennis. It's not a thing for me. But anyway, like I just remember doing things with them like that. Like we did things together. I like gelled with that family. They really accepted me and made me a part of their family. And for me, when we would break up and when we eventually broke up, I really missed his family and the way they made me feel. You know, they really cared about me. And what's funny to me was I never had that in my marriage, right? I never really gelled in with that family like that, which is super important to me because I really value my relationships. And if you're in my life, any relationship that is important to you is going to be important to me, and I'm going to make an effort. But I would say my ex too wasn't like overly attached to his family either. So I never really got that bond. So it made it easier for me to leave. So, okay, back to where I was. So it was a little, I digress. But I do think it's important that the two families support the marriage and support the daughter-in-law or son-in-law, whoever it is coming into the household. I think that that goes a long way. And I think when you look at it, whether it's financial, we're talking about Indian weddings, right? Big fat Indian weddings, whether it's financial support, schooling, housing, or emotional support for either partner, I think those parents, they really play an important role. And what the article said was that the parents provide valuable resources for the couple as they navigate through the marital transition. And I think that that's really important. And I also think that this is something that I read, and it was said by an associate professor from Stanford University, but he's quoted as saying, and I agree with him, I don't think love marriage and arranged marriage are as different as we make them out to be. Because in the end, like, it's this, like, you have to make it work. And yes, in a love marriage, like, you have that love, and that's like your foundation for the marriage. And in an arranged marriage, you don't have that love, but you have the support and the other infrastructure that creates a safe space for the love to bloom. So the support is the foundation, which is actually what a foundation is support. Anyway, and then in a love marriage, love is the foundation. And so this was interesting. This is a quote from a rabbi from the Orthodox Union in New York, and he said, in the secular world, a lot of times a couple will fall in love with each other, and then at that point, they lose objectivity. And in arranged marriages, there's a lot of homework, a lot of energy spent before a man and woman can fall in love with each other. And they say that for that reason, he says, that's why the parents are involved. Obviously, it's the decision of the young man and woman, but what he's saying is a parent knows their child. I'm going to go back to the first part of Rabbi's quote here, but I agree with him a little bit, where he's saying that a couple falls in love with each other and then they lose objectivity. Love is blind. How many times have we heard that? love is blind. And when you are attached to someone and in love with someone, you will overlook a lot of their flaws and faults and just not paying attention to them because you're in love. It'll all work out. And you're talking to the eternal, like, hopeless romantic here, right? I think that that's true because I'm a realist also. Like, I see this happen all the time. I've done it myself. So I do think that there's some truth in what the rabbi said. I think we fall in love and we lose that objectivity or that those thoughts of like, is this good for us? Are we going to work out long term? How are we going to navigate, X, Y, and Z? Like, you lose that because you're so in love with the person. You're not thinking practically anymore. Here's the catch, though. I don't think love's practical. And if love is practical, I don't want that kind of love. Sorry. That's a great quote, you guys. You guys can use it. You can use it. Just credit me. But anyway, I think that that's true. And so why? Why am I here talking about arranged marriages? So obviously growing up South Asian, right? My parents had an arranged marriage, and I will tell you it was a forced marriage. They were married for several years, but it didn't work out. My dad probably fell more in love with my mom towards the end than she ever did, but I don't want to talk about that because I'm going to get scolded. But yeah, so they had a forced arranged marriage. Neither one of them actually wanted to marry the other. I think once my dad saw my mom, he was like, okay, I'll marry her, but whatever. So my mom, when I was younger, like, I think in her head, she always thought that I would go through that path. And I think having gone through what she went through, she would never force my hand, never. But I think she wanted to be the one to find me someone and then give me the veto power. And I remember, so what happens, right? How does this all happen, right? So what ends up happening is a lot of times when a young woman or a young man goes out and about to social events, weddings, visiting family from out of town, whatever it is, and someone sees you, then they start inquiring to your family members about you. And then somebody will get a call and be like, hey, so-and-so was asking if this person's single, if they're looking to get married, we have a candidate. Like, it's very professional. It's almost like a business. Y'all, I remember the first time somebody asked about me. I was 16. I was 16 years old, and my mom had sent me on my first solo trip and to family, but I went to Canada, and I was there for like a month, and I was visiting my grandmother, my nanny, and she has a ton of brothers and sisters, so my aunts and uncles are up there. And I remember I was there, and I kind of stayed with different aunts and uncles for different periods of time. Like, I wanted to stay with everybody, be super, spread my love to everybody, be super respectful, and just get to spend time with my family. Like I said, I'm a very family-oriented person. And I remember I was with my nanny, and she was going to go visit an old lady friend of hers who I didn't know and had never met. And so we went, and I can't even remember who took us. I think my aunt took us. But anyway, so she drove us over to this old lady's house, and we went and we just hung out. And here's the thing, guys, like, I have always been attracted to older people. Like, as a 3-year-old, my best friends were these 2 senior citizen ladies, Tiny and Dorothy, that lived on our street. And they would walk every night, and not night, but every day and evening. And I would wait for them to walk by our house, and I would run out there with my bike, and I would ride my bike and walk with them. And I would go sit at their houses. Like, I have just always been really attracted to older people. I really think I have an old soul, y'all. Like, I really think I have an old soul. I'm very comfortable around older people. I'm talking like senior citizen old, right? Like geriatric old. It's just always been a thing for me. I've always been super close to my grandmother. I don't know if it's a complex from never having met either one of my grandfathers, but I've just always been really friendly and like empathetic to older senior citizens. And so I was there and I met this lady, and so she's, you know, her and my grandma are like chatting it up and they're talking about their old stories and their men, and they're like filling me in. I loved listening to my grandmother talk about my grandpa. Like, I love listening to her to tell stories about my nana and about her life. And then I'm listening to this lady and they're talking to me, and I, like, unlike most 16-year-olds, I'm not sitting there. This is like pre-cell phone, right? So I'm like not sitting there bored out of my mind. I'm actually participating in the conversation and asking questions. And I don't know, we had lunch there or something, and I remember I like jumped in to like help out, because that's just how, like I said, like I'm very about like that family bond. Like I'm not like a sit backer, like I get involved. And so like I was just like helping out, maybe like helping with the dishes or helping warm up lunch, whatever it was. And I remember after I got back to Southern California, we were in Southern California then, and I remember I got back and my nanny called, and she was telling me and my mom that basically after we left, her friend called her and was like, hey, we really like Ashika. Like, I have a grandson, and I really think that they would hit it off, and I think we should get them married. And my nanny was like, she's 16. She still has to like finish school. She's too young, not now, like maybe at another time. Thank you, nanny. Although I wonder what could have been between me and this woman's grandson. Who knows? He could have been my soulmate, y'all. My soulmate somewhere in Canada. Anyway. That was the first time I ever got, offered. And then as the years went on, they came and went, and I was always very adamant. Well, number one, I'm a hopeless romantic, right? So I'm going to find my own person. I'm not going to do this. I was very anti having my mom get involved in my love life at all. And so, in the end, when I got married, that was, it's somebody that I met on my own terms. He wasn't of my background. He's Hispanic. We got married. We did the whole thing, and it didn't work out well. Recently, y'all know I've been single for a really long time. Of course, I've dated people, and I've had, like, little relationships and situationships or whatever. But I know that I want to find love and I want to settle down eventually, and I don't know if settling down, I don't know what that looks like for me. I don't know if that, I always joke, and people ask me all the time, right? Like, would you ever get married again? And I don't say no, but I say I don't think it's necessary. I really don't. Just having gone through a divorce and how annoying it was, my divorce process took about 3 years and it got really ugly. I don't know if I have a fear of that, so I don't know if it's really necessary. I think I could be in a committed relationship with somebody and cohabitate and be fine without that little piece of paper. But then I always say, right, like if you see me get married again, you better know that I'm like head over heels in love with this person. Like, because to me, like, again, hopeless romantic, right? Like, if I'm head over heels in love with you, you're damn fucking right I want to marry you. Like, I'm going to want to marry you. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, if somebody that you're, like, head over heels, and I'm not saying, like, if I didn't get married and I was living with somebody, I don't mean anything. Like, they don't mean anything to me. That's not what I'm saying. But if I'm head over heels in love with someone, and that man gets down on one knee and he proposes to me, I'm not saying no. I'm not, right? So, if that's something that he wants in the future, then yeah, I'll say yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know. But I'm just saying, if a man you love gets down on one knee, you say yes. So I don't really know what that looks like for me. But I do know that I do want to settle down eventually, and I do, I am craving intimacy with someone and to have that partnership. And so a while back, when I got off all the dating apps, right, I was like, I'm putting that to bed. I did, like, my mom was like, when are you gonna, especially after my brother got married, then now, like, she's just, like, on my case, right? She was like, when are you gonna settle down, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you know what, go do your thing. Go find someone. Go do your thing. Like, go do your networking. I don't care. Because I know that it won't be a forced marriage. I know that it will be an introduction is what it is. And I know that she would never force my hand. And the way I look at it, like the same way that I have friends and colleagues and people trying to introduce me to people that they think that I'll hit it off with, if I am going to trust a friend or a colleague to do it, how am I not going to trust my mom, who does know me best? Like, this woman knows me. So, yes, I gave her permission. I was like, go be, go, what is that? Live long and prosper or something. I'm not a Star Wars or Trekkie sci-fi person. But anyway, I basically gave her my blessing. I was like, go do what you got to do. Nothing's happened, right? And I told, because the thing about South Asians is, like, every time you meet someone, they're asking you, like, oh, are you gonna get married again? Are you looking? And then if you say that, like, yeah, I'm looking, like, they're gonna start looking for you. So I've literally, like, we had a wedding here last year in April, and I had a ton of family here, and of course, there's a wedding, we're all going, and I'm there, and they're like, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna settle down? And I'm like, hey, if you find somebody, let me know. I'm happy to meet somebody. I'm happy to meet somebody. And so the whole reason that this came up is because yesterday I was at my mom's house, and she was like, oh, so what are you doing with your life? Like, what's going This is what my mom does, right? She's like, what are you doing with your life? Like, what's going on? Are you doing the things that you're supposed to be doing? Because I've had 2 phone calls about you. She's had a couple offers, y'all. She's had a couple offers. Here's the thing, right? And here's the thing that I appreciate about these offers when she has them is, like, they do all the vetting. Like, it's not like, oh, so-and-so has somebody who's interested. Like, this is the person who's interested in you. This is how old he is. This is what he does for a living. This is his occupation. So it's like, I'm getting like a well-rounded sort of background on this person, which is a lot more than I would get other times. So, that part is okay. So I'm getting all the deets from my mom, and I'm like, well, if you've been listening to the show, you know that I'm kind of like the last person that was in my life didn't really end well. And so when Fabian was on the show, we just kind of said that I was just taking a little break, right? And I am taking a little break. I'm not interested in I'm not that I'm not interested. I'm still dealing with things and processing things. And so I'm kind of like, okay, okay, but she didn't have any pictures for me yet. And that's the other thing I really like is I get to see pictures and then get to know what they do for a living and how many people are in their house, where they live, all this stuff. But anyway, here's the thing about this, and it's kind of like the reason I told her to go ahead and like have at it is because I think if people are talking about me in that sense, they're like, oh yeah, like there's positives and negatives, right? So the negatives would obviously be the fact that like I'm divorced and I have a child, which I'll never look at my child as a negative, but most typically South Asians will. But the positives are like, she's super independent. She has a job. She's driven. She has a career. She has her own house. Like the positives probably outweigh the negatives. And then obviously they're probably talking about my appearance. And so, it's, I think that's great. Like, if you're just going to talk about those things, it's great. But here's the thing. And this is what I tell my mom when she says, like, so-and-so is interested in you. And I'm like, you need to tell them to listen to the podcast. Because I think for South Asians, it's going to be a big deal breaker. Because this is a dating and relationship podcast. And so I'm talking about things that most South Asians don't talk about openly with their family dynamics or even with each other. And I'm doing it publicly and it's out there for the whole world to see. And I don't plan on like stopping. And I think that would be like a huge like deal breaker for these people. And so part of me also had like that insurance. And I'm not saying that there isn't some South Asian family out there that's super modern and would be okay with it. Because like my family obviously is okay with it. Of course, they still gripe about certain things to me with it and they have no control over me. I do what I won't. But I think when that comes into play in a South Asian family dynamic, then it'll go back to that, like, what will people say? Like, this is what she's talked about. Did you know she had this many relationships? Did you know she went on this many dates? Do you know she's dated all these guys that she's like talked about? And it's like, ooh, they're not gonna like that. I don't think they're gonna like that. And I think that makes me undesirable for a South Asian family. But I don't know. It's very interesting. I talked about it last week in the emotional safety episode. It's taken me years to kind of mesh and merge my personality from when I was a kid and like who I really was and then who I was at home, and to find like who I am as one person with both parts of that and be comfortable being that in front of my family. And I now have a family where they just know certain things about me. Like, women aren't supposed to drink. Like, you know, girls don't drink. I'm a drinker. I used to bartend. Like, I like my alcohol. I like to have an alcoholic beverage. And I love making alcoholic beverages. Like, making craft cocktails, coming up with craft cocktails is like a hobby of mine. I have 2 bars in this house. Like, hello. And so my family now, and even my extended family, is very well aware. They won't even bat an eye. Like, they, like, honestly, like, I drink with my uncles. Like, they know. But, like, a new family, if I, like, go out somewhere with them, and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna, like, grab a glass of champs or something, like, I'm gonna be judged. And I refuse to hide those parts of me. I refuse to unmerge myself. I don't know what that means for my mom. Like, I don't know what that means on how lucky she's going to be in her endeavors here. These 2 offers that came in, who knows what's going to happen. It doesn't really sound very promising. I'm not really interested in either of them. But I haven't seen pictures yet. But I don't care how attractive you are. I ain't hiding who I am. And I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. So I think that for me, it's like it's a little difficult. It's gonna be a little challenging for her, and it's so funny because my best friend Fabian really supports her in her endeavor. He's like, it's so funny because like just right before I started talking to this last guy, he was like, oh yeah, we're doing this together, and I was like, well, I kind of like have this thing, like I think this is gonna like go somewhere. And he's like, that's fine. Like, we'll compete. We'll see who wins first. And so I didn't win. But she's not going anywhere with it yet. But it's interesting. I just don't think like I am, if she's gonna be honest with someone and say like, hey, like this is what she does. She has this, she has a podcast. It's about dating and relationships. You should check it out. And then if they listen, they may not like what they hear. And like, I'm a potty mouth, y'all. Like, the show is explicit. Like, I fucking swear. Like, people, they don't like that. People don't like that. I don't know. But I refuse to be anything else but my authentic self, because that's what I always say, right? Stay authentic. And it's so funny. So while I was doing my research, I found a bunch of different testimonials from people who had arranged marriages. And there's this one guy. And so if you do go to the website and you read the articles, you'll find this because I'll link it. But he was talking about how he wasn't a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. And so he had a very, he was like, I can't remember what he was, but he was like a consultant or something like that. And he went to India, being from America, from the US, right? You would think that he would be a hot commodity because it gets whoever this woman is a ticket into the States. Well, what ended up happening was because he was not a doctor, lawyer, or engineer, people were not interested in him. They did not take him seriously. And it outweighed the fact that these people would get a ticket to the States. And so that I found really interesting because that is how it works. It really is a system of checks and balances and checking off boxes. And like, I don't know how I measure up in that sort of thing, but I don't know, y'all. I'm a hopeless romantic. I just want to find my person on my own, and I want to fall in love, and I don't think I could ever be married without being in love. Just like I said earlier, like I would have to be like head over heels in love with someone in order to get married again. And I'm not saying it couldn't happen through one of mom's introductions, but I think the likeliness is really low. What do y'all think? I mean, if you're a South Asian and you listen, I know you know exactly what I'm talking about when these offers come in, because your parents tell you. They tell you. I mean, they're excited about it. It's like the first thing they say to you. They're like, oh, guess what? So-and-so called and da-da-da-da-da. How many of you have had these offers? Have you ever met anybody off of these offers? So that's the thing. Like, I've never met anyone off of this. So my hairdresser, a few months back, my hairdresser, because she, I talk to her all the time, and she's always on me too. She's South Asian, and so she's like, when are you gonna get married? Like, are you gonna get married? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm out there, I'm looking. And she's like, are you dating anybody? And by that point, I wasn't dating anybody. And she's like, you don't have a boyfriend? I was like, no, I don't have a boyfriend. No. And so she set me up with someone. And basically, like, she sent me his photo, and he was attractive, y'all. He was attractive. And so I was like, okay, you can give him my number. And so he called me, and we spoke on the phone once, and it's just like no chemistry there. And so I kind of let it go. And so her new thing, like, she talks to my mom because my mom goes to her too, and she's like, oh, Ashika's too picky. And it's like, I'm not picky, but like, I want that romance, and I want that spark. And like, maybe that's why I'm single. I'm just not going to settle. Like, I'm not at that point in my life where I'm like, oh, I just want a partner. I want somebody. No, ma'am. No, I would still be married if that's all I wanted. So, no, ma'am. I'm not going to settle. I'm either going to find my person, or I will just stay happy and content being me, living my best life. I don't know. Let me know if you've had this experience. What are your thoughts on arranged marriages? In particular, the modern arranged marriage, the new arranged marriage that I'm talking about. Have you ever been pressured? Would you consider it? Would you consider something like this? Because if you think about it in the long run, really all it is, it's an introduction. So I don't see any harm in it, but most South Asians aren't as open-minded as I am. So that's another hurdle, I suppose, that somebody will have to get over, because I ain't getting over it. I am who I am. Anyway, you guys, that's all I have for you today. Do me a favor, if you haven't liked me on Facebook yet, please do so. Follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram. Check out the website, timepasspodcast.com, if you want to know more about today's topic and arranged marriages, because I will link all the articles I did for my research there. If you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you're a time passer, you enjoy listening to me rant about whatever I'm ranting about every week, do me a favor and share this episode with one person, especially if you're South Asian or into arranged marriages, or you know somebody who's being pressured for an introduction, a mom introduction or family introduction. Share this with them, because I know they will feel my pain and see where, I just want to know. I want to know. Share it. Spill the tea. Spill the tea with me. All right, you guys, stay authentic in anything you do. It's not that serious. Your person is gonna love you for who you are. You're not gonna have to hide bits and pieces of yourself. So stay authentic, and I will see you next time.